moving finger writes and, having writ, moves on. He records that in the 7th century of our era, a political explosion struck the world with the force of a thunderbolt, the greatest in speed and extent history has ever known. The Arabs, world conquerors. Within a century of their rise to power, they had mastered an empire that stretched from the Atlantic to the confines of China, an empire greater than Rome and its zenith. Carthage fell before them in North Africa. In Persia, they pierced deeper than any invasion before or since. Land of Cyrus the Great, the sun-baked platform of Persepolis, where Darius and Xerxes built unrivaled palaces. To this great slab in the trunk route from Europe to Asia, the Arabs brought a new religion and a new script, and found their own life deepened by Persia's mysticism and poetry. In the west, the Arabs drove straight to the Atlantic, Morocco, southern France, and Spain. The Alhambra, a new kind of architecture. Arcades that repose in perfect calm, the static equilibrium of a crystal. Fountains that turn interiors into oases of freshness. Back to the east, the Mughal invasion of India. Unlike Hindu architecture, Muslim buildings lean towards clarity and sobriety. Mughal buildings in India remain among the finest there are. The Taj Mahal, Qutub Minar, a tower of sandstone, one of the most perfect in the world. Today, the Red Fort broods over Delhi like a mute symbol of departed glory. Once it was a monumental palace. Shah Jahan's couplet is still on its walls. If on earth there be a paradise of bliss, it is this, it is this, it is this. The dynamite that powered this explosion was a religion, Islam. Wherever the Arabs went, they pierced the sky with their minarets to call man back to God and the good. Stabbing summons to the upward light. Youngest of the great religions, it reverenced Christ and the prophets of Israel. But to Israel's monotheism and Christ's love thy neighbor, it added how to love him. Trust in God and his messenger Muhammad. Pray 5 times each day. Give to the poor. Fast during the month of Ramadan. And if possible, once in one's lifetime, make a pilgrimage to Mecca. This was and is Islam for the majority. But for others, there was more. We call these others Sufis. For every outside there is an inside. For every body a soul. The soul of Islam is Sufism. It arose as a reaction against the worldliness that came over Islam with its rise to power. Ascetics, some living in caves, donned coarse woolen shirts from which the word Sufi derives, to protest the silks and satins of sultans and caliphs. They wanted to purify and spiritualize Islam from within, give it a deeper mystical tone, infuse into it a spirit of liberty and love. Externals must yield to internals, matter to meaning, outward symbol to inner reality. Love the picture less, they cried, and the water more. For most Muslims, God is on the periphery. The Sufis wanted him stage center. They wanted to shift him from background to foreground, to meet him face to face. Religiously, they were an elite, aspiring higher and willing to assume the heavier disciplines their extravagant goal required. For all Muslims, the ritual washing that precedes prayer symbolizes the aspiration to inward purity. The Sufi aspires by ablution to absolute purity, purity from everything that is other than God.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة
Likewise with prostration. For Muslims generally, it enacts humility, the willingness to be shattered by God's majesty. For Sufis, it expresses absolute humility, the craving to extinguish the separate self completely in the divine presence. Prayer is the Muslim's vigil, directed towards Mecca, culminating in the moment when his forehead reaches the floor. All Muslims pray 5 times each day. The Sufi tries to pray without ceasing, to make of his entire life a prayer. Every faithful Muslim will enjoy God's presence eventually. The Sufi wants him now, here, in this very life. This calls for someone who has already realized him. In India, he would be called a guru. In Islam, he is a sheikh, a master. This one in Iran, this one in North Africa, drawn from memory by one of his disciples, this one in Ajmer. He tells his disciples that they are servants of their Creator and delineates the path they should walk. But he doesn't just point to the path, he embodies it, path and the goal to which it leads. His serenity and compassion would be impossible if he were not already where we would like to be, experiencing the world as God-soaked to a degree we find difficult to imagine. So the seeker stays with him. Through initiation, he becomes a disciple and a member of a Sufi order. Each February in Delhi, disciples of Hazrat Inayat Khan, founder of their order, commemorate through Urs, a memorial service, his death and continuing life. It's like a chain reaction. The disciple empowered by his master, the master by the founder of his order, the founder by Muhammad, and Muhammad by God himself. Two things at root distinguish the Sufi from his brother Muslims. First, he tightened the Muslim creed, no God but God, to mean literally that nothing but God exists. Second, he stressed symbolism. The two obviously go together, for if there really isn't anything but God, the things that seem different from him must be God in disguise. They must be symbols which, while concealing God from the uninitiated, reveal him to those who can crack his code. A canopy bespeaks God's sheltering mercy. Flowers foretell of paradise. So it goes, meaning after meaning, in a world where God's veils have been stripped away.
ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها اللهم يا مقلب القلوب والأبصار ثبت قلوبنا على دينك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Muslim art fits this view of the world as symbol-laden perfectly. On the whole, it is stylized and abstract, so as not to distract us towards the world's specifics. Meanwhile, where representations do appear, they open out and back, so to speak, to the divine. They point to God as to a horizon off canvas. Meaning after meaning, and meaning atop meaning. For no sooner does the Sufi spot one meaning in an act or object than he begins to dig below it for additional deeper meanings. Even the surface readings of the Quran hide 77 hidden symbolic significances. Or removing one's shoes. For all Muslims, it is an act of reverence. The Sufi starts there, but he goes on to see in it, in addition, removing the basis of his apparent separation from the divine. When one of their number announced in the ecstasy of God intoxication that he was God, he was crucified by the Orthodox as ascribing to God a rival. In fact, he was doing the opposite. He was denying that anything other than God, his separate self included, exists. The world isn't God, but it resides wholly within him, reflecting his glory. But we forget. We forget. So dhikr, remembrance, is crucial. It's crucial for Islam as a whole, but again the Sufis carried it further. For one thing, they repeated the name Allah more often. Some developed devices like the head jerk, which, throwing blood to the brain, made it more receptive. But the devotional assist the Sufis perfected was the song. Exoteric Islam had a Quaker-like distrust of music, fearing with Plato its sensuality, the passions it can so easily arouse. But the Sufis, riding their gales of lyrical fervor, couldn't keep it out. Let me sing till I am nothing but a voice. Let me pray till I am nothing but a prayer. No Islam do I see, but only Allah. How can I tell the depths of his glory? My song goes on. Were it not for my song, I would die, for abstinence from the song of glory is presence in the fires of hell. What is Sufism but the promise of a song, that the song be sung on earth as it is sung in heaven? If music and song created a scandal among the Orthodox, neither being enjoined by the Quran, how much more the dance? The Puritans among them were shocked, which didn't, of course, cause the Sufis to desist. Man is so made that spiritual states tend to seek bodily expression. Jalaluddin al-Rumi, founder of the Mevlevi order, composed some of his noblest lyrics while gyrating around a column in his convent. His order came to be known in Europe as the whirling dervishes, from their mystical dance that mimed the solar system, each figure a planet circling the shape, the centering sun, the one still point in our turning world. Music of the spheres, mimed by man's total self and thereby tuned totally to it. During one such occasion, the muezzin sounded the summons to midday prayer. A passerby stuck his head in the door and shouted, "Prayers, prayers!" The sheikh replied, "We are at prayer," and the dancing continued. There were perversions, of course. Crude superstition crept in. Periodically the movement degenerated, here into a saint cult, there into blind imitation or submission. But Sufism has never ceased to play a humble but profound part in the life of the Muslim community. For its finger is on something basic, the something in man that is larger than life. Proof of its existence being that we never quite fit into life, not the life we know. Sufism fixes on this overplus in man to nurture it and give it release. Islam is a circle. God is its center, its circumference is his law. Each Muslim, observing that law, stands as a point on the circumference. Sufism is the radius, the path that leads from the circumference to the center, the way to the good. Like echoes of a flute, Suspended in the vault of the Taj, the Sufi hears a call. Faint at first, it issues from his past, where the Quran tells him, "We made man of the best stature." Surely this full potential must be recoverable. So the Sufi sets out. The quest after the infinite has become the one thing that offers meaning to his finite world. The path begins in institutions, in corridors the countless others have trod before him, but it will open soon enough onto the trackless wastes where everyone must be his own scout. The road isn't easy. It leads where there is no water but only rock, rock and no water in the sandy steppes. But as he keeps going, hints of exaltation begin to flash. They don't announce their source, but they counter vicissitude. Like an athlete in training, the pilgrim is being transformed. A deep significance is coming into view. A holy essence is disclosing itself. It arrives, descends, penetrates as if one were receiving from all directions. Feelings no language can describe, words having become like chains holding one back, like walls with holes in them. Even so, reality keeps rushing through until, with a new and heretofore unexperienced sense of knowing, the Sufi knows. Knows what? Knows through participation the something that lives of itself and makes us live. The life behind consciousness from which consciousness derives. Eternity now, about him like the sunshine. He within it as a butterfly in the light-laden air. He has arrived where the paint is mixed that colors the world. He has achieved the stillness that is the dancing.